internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? I always send you to djlittlerock.com. I think the people are finding out about djlittlerock.com. That's where you can check availability and get a free price quote. And then maybe you can have me at your next event. You know I like to party with the people. The people need to be entertained. Let me entertain you. Are you not entertained? Oh, my goodness. This week's shows, I'll be at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas on Friday night. That's my regular video dance party, karaoke jam every Friday night. It's been a lot of fun. It's starting to feel like old times. I know we're taking care of each other as we come in due to this coronavirus that we don't have a cure yet for, the COVID-19. We wear masks on the way in and wear masks while you're interacting with other people. But while you're seated, you can take the mask down, have some drinky drinks, get some good food over at the Rab in Conway, Arkansas. Friday night, video dance party, karaoke jam. Yeah, I said karaoke. You're the stars of the show. Full bar, kitchens open, pool tables, pool tournament every Friday night. The place to be. I'll wait. You got time. It's on Friday, 8 p.m. All right. Let's see. This is What Makes You Smarter. But if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Do you remember? Hey, it's September. All right. Fall is quite upon us. How about that? So Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Trump, Biden clash over protests, violence. President Trump and Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden on Monday continued to trade criticism over violent clashes surrounding protests against racial injustice in Portland, Oregon, and Kenosha, Wisconsin. Biden said in a speech that Trump is a, quote, toxic presence, end quote. He condemned looting and arson, saying they were crimes, not protests. Trump accused Biden of refusing to repudiate leftist protesters, although Biden had said the day before that he condemned violence, quote, whether on the left or the right, end quote. Trump also defended Kyle Rittenhouse, the 17-year-old Trump supporter accused of fatally shooting 2 people and wounding another in Kenosha. Trump, who is visiting Kenosha on Tuesday, despite local officials' request that he stay away, the said Rittenhouse fired, quote, while trying to get away, end quote, from protesters. Quote, he probably would have been killed, end quote, Trump said. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 2, appeals court denies DOJ push to end Flynn case. A federal appeals court on Monday rejected the request by the Justice Department and Michael Flynn, President Trump's former national security advisor, to drop the case against him for lying under oath to the FBI about his communications with Russia's ambassador before Trump's inauguration. Flynn twice pleaded guilty, but Attorney General William Barr this year moved to stop pursuing the case. The appeals court's 8-2 decision restores the power of the original judge, Emmett Sullivan, to determine whether to keep the politically charged case alive. Sullivan had asked an independent lawyer to argue against dismissing the case. Previously, a 3-judge panel from the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals had sided with Flynn 2-1. This is according to CNN. Number 3, Oregon sends state police to help curb Portland violence. Oregon authorities dispatched state police on Monday to help calm violent clashes between protesters demanding racial justice and armed right-wing groups that have countered them. Governor Kate Brown, Democrat, blamed the violence on a right-wing group called the Patriot Prayer, one of whose supporters was fatally shot over the weekend. Quote, I will not allow Patriot Prayer and armed white supremacists to bring more bloodshed to our streets, end quote, she said. Protests have continued nightly in Portland since George Floyd, an unarmed black man, died after a white Minneapolis police officer pressed his knee into Floyd's neck for several minutes. President Trump blamed the turmoil on Portland's Democratic mayor. Quote, if this joke of a mayor doesn't clean it up, we will go in and do it for them, end quote, Trump tweeted Monday. This is according to Reuters. Number 4, advisor reportedly pushes White House to adopt herd immunity strategy. A top health advisor to President Trump, Scott Atlas, has pushed the White House to adopt a controversial, quote, herd immunity, end quote, strategy towards fighting the coronavirus pandemic, alarming public officials. The approach, which has been used by Sweden, involves protecting people in vulnerable groups such as the elderly, while letting the virus spread to others at lower risk, resulting in herd immunity to the virus. Atlas, who is a neuroradiologist and not an infectious disease expert, reportedly meets with Trump nearly every day. Public health experts warn that using the herd immunity approach could result in 2.13 million deaths in the United States before 65% of the population is infected and the country reaches herd immunity. This is according to the Washington Post. Number 5, India accuses China of violating border peace agreement. India on Monday accused China of making, quote, provocative military movements, end quote, on the two nuclear powers disputed border in violation of a recent peace agreement. At least 20 Indian soldiers were killed in clashes with Chinese forces in June before the two countries reached a peace agreement. China denied doing anything to upset the status quo, saying its border troops had, quote, always strictly observed the line of actual control and have never crossed the line, end quote. Delhi said its soldiers, quote, preempted, end quote, Chinese advances on August 29th and, quote, undertook measures to strengthen our positions and thwart Chinese intentions, end quote. Analysts said the public nature of the announcement suggested that the peace had been broken. This is according to BBC News and the New York Times. Number 6, coronavirus cases and complications rise among children. Coronavirus cases, hospitalizations, and deaths from COVID-19 have increased faster among children and teens than among general population, according to data compiled by the American Academy of Pediatrics from May 21st to August 20th. Data collection varied among the states, with some separating young babies and teens while others lumped them together. But the general rise in exposure and complications from COVID-19 was similar across the country. In May, 5% of the nation's cases were children. In August, the figure rose to 9%, and the number suffering serious complications has risen too. And Dr. Sean O'Leary, vice chairman of the Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Infectious Diseases. Quote, yes, it's less severe in children than adults, but it's not completely benign, end quote, O'Leary said. This is according to the New York Times. Number 7, Biden has a 6-point lead over Trump among active duty troops in poll. Active duty military members favor Democrats' presidential nominee Joe Biden to President Trump 43 to 37%. A poll from Military Times and the Institute for Veterans and Military Families at Syracuse University has found. That's a major shift from where Trump stood in 2016, when he had a 41 to 21 lead over former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Trump's overall support among those active duty troops has fallen as well, with just 38% having a favorable view of him per the poll. That matches his lowest approval ever recorded among active duty troops, which was found in late 2019 respondents, 49.9%, viewed Trump unfavorably, and 42% said they, quote, strongly disapprove, end quote, of Trump's time in office. This is according to the Military Times. Number 8, Liberty University plans investigation of Falwell's tenure. Liberty University on Monday announced an investigation into the tenure of Jerry Falwell Jr., the former president of the Evangelical Christian School, who was ousted last week over a sex scandal. Liberty's board said the independent investigation would look into a broad range of issues, including financial, real estate, and legal matters. The board said in a statement that it was committed to looking into, quote, all facets, end quote, of the school's operations to find out, quote, the consequences that have flowed from the lack of spiritual stewardship by our former president, end quote. Calls for an inquiry mounted after Falwell agreed last week to step down from the leadership position he had held since 2007. This is according to the Associated Press. Number 9, Amazon gets FAA approval for its drones to deliver packages. Amazon has received federal approval to use its fleet of Prime Air drones to deliver packages to customers, the Federal Aviation Administration said Monday. The approval gives the online retail giant broad privileges to, quote, safely and efficiently, quote, end quote, use small drones to carry packages, quote, beyond the visual line of sight, end quote, of operators. Now that it has the FAA certification, Amazon will start testing customer deliveries. Amazon said it isn't ready to widely deploy the drones, but the certification, quote, is an important step forward for Prime Air, end quote, allowing the company to continue refining the technology, which it started testing in 2013 with a goal of shortening delivery times for many items from 30 minutes to 30 minutes or less. This is according to the New York Times and CNBC. Number 10, Georgetown basketball coach John Thompson Jr. dies at 78. Legendary basketball coach John Thompson Jr. has died at 78. Thompson's death was confirmed by his family on Monday, who in a statement said, quote, our father was an inspiration to many and devoted his life to developing young people, not simply on, but most importantly, off the basketball court, end quote. His cause of death was not disclosed. Thompson served as coach of Georgetown University for nearly 3 decades after playing for the Boston Celtics for 2 seasons. And he became the first black basketball head coach to win the NCAA National Championship in 1984. In 1999, he was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame. He retired with a 596 to 239 record. Quote, for us, his greatest legacy remains as a father, grandfather, uncle, and friend, end quote, Thompson's family said. This is according to CBS News and CNN. That's 10 things you need to know today for Tuesday, September 1st, 2020. Thank you so much for listening. This has been What Makes You Smarter. I hope everybody out there is doing reasonably well. Let me know what you're doing. Let me know what you're up to. Drop me some comments, like, subscribe, all that kind of thing. It helps me get to the top of the charts. And help me help you. We're trying to make each other smarter, I guess, if you're listening to this. Also, if you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Speaking of hashtags, that's the easiest way to find me doing my game streaming. KeysDAN Gaming. Hashtag KeysDAN Gaming. That's the way to find me. You'll find me on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook, streaming live. I'll probably stream some games in just a little bit. So stay tuned for that. Hashtag KeysDAN Gaming. That's it for me. It's KeysDAN, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com.